you look at their division, and their division is absolutely winnable. I mean, this is one of the worst divisions in football. I mean, the Jaguars, we were just talking about the Jags. They look horrible. I know it's a preseason game, and I keep talking about how good Trevor Lawrence is going to be. But the only team that really stands out in that division that they're probably going to fight for is probably Indianapolis. And they have Matt Ryan there. Matt Ryan, this is his first year under center for a team that pretty much knows their offense. They have a very good running back in Jonathan Taylor. This is a good team. But I just think when you look at the big picture of both of these teams, they're going to be fighting tooth and nail who's going to be the number one and who's going to be the number two in the division. Where do you see this division falling as far as what you have seen so far this preseason?
Yeah, I certainly think, Colts and Titans are head and shoulders above the other two. I do think I think the Jaguars overpaid all kinds of people during the offseason, but at least that means they're going to be a little bit better. Even if you're overpaying guys, you've got more talent. So they should take a little step up, and then they've got a better coach that couldn't get any worse. So they'll be a little bit better. But, the Texans, I didn't
even mention them, as you notice. I didn't even mention the name.
Yeah, I almost beat the Titans at the end of the season last year.
Right. It's a different story there. I think you can see the initial signs of a rebuild for the Texans, but that's a long way away. So, yeah, I like a lot of things about the Colts team. I like their defense for the most part. Mm-hmm. I think Frank Reich will be able to do some good things with Matt Ryan. I'm a little concerned if I'm the Colts. That offensive line, especially the tackles on the outside, mm-hmm. a little questionable in my opinion. And some of their skill players, at the wide receiver spots, still pretty young for the most part, and a lot of those guys are unproven. So, I think the good news for the Titans is, the Titans have a very strong defense, again, even without Harold Landry. And I think that matches up pretty well, against what the Colts' weakness is. So I don't know. I think it's going to be very tight between those teams. I still maybe call me a homer. Maybe I give the Titans just a little bit of an edge overall in that race.
So I wanted to ask about the defense because in addition to losing Harold Landry, they also lost a lot of players in the offseason too, but 2 inside linebackers, a couple interior defensive linemen as well. And now they're really getting younger on the defensive side of the ball. They purged a lot of the big contracts that the regime tried to bring in when they brought in Vrabel initially. So what do you think this defense will look like as a whole? And do you think maybe they have to change things up schematically because of that?
Yeah, I mean, when you lose a guy like Harold Landry, who's coming off a career year, had 12 sacks last year, guy played close to 1,000 snaps last season. They put him everywhere, left, right, middle. He was in coverage sometimes, just a really versatile player. So that takes a lot out of you. But at the same time, I think edge rusher, the edge position in general, is probably one of the Titans' strengths. They were deep at that position. You've still got Bud Dupree. Danico Autry is a very good player who plays both inside and out. I think this means he'll play a little bit more on the edge. So you've still got 2 players out there in Dupree and Autry who are very good. You got a guy from Rashad Weaver who's expected to be good. He didn't play much last year as a rookie. He was hurt. I think he's good. And another guy behind them, Ola Adaney, who kind of flashed sometimes last year too. So I think they still have depth at that edge position. You've got Jeffrey Simmons inside, who's a beast.
Love him.
Tremendous player.
Simmons.
Yeah, I still think he's underrated. But I think you mentioned the guys leaving an inside linebacker, but you got Zach Cunningham, who's an animal against the run. All kinds of tackles and so forth, and a kind of an underrated guy who's going to step into the starting lineup more so this year is David Long, who's very good against the pass. So that's a good complementary duo, inside linebacker. Safety duo, I think, is maybe one of the better in the league with Kevin Byard and Amani Hooker, who is really, really coming on. And the corner spot, they've got 4 guys there who were, picked in the top 1, 2, or 3 rounds in the last 2 seasons. So a ton of talent there. It's just a matter of the seasoning, if you will. So, even with the loss of Landry, and you mentioned some of the guys that moved on, I still think that's a pretty good defense. And I think I still think it better be a pretty good defense because, I'm concerned about what the offense is going to bring to the table.
You look at their schedule, and their schedule is very interesting. It's strong, it's weak. I mean, so let's go through some of the games and where we think they're going to win and where we think they're going to lose, and predict their record. I want to know what your prediction of their record is going to be. Going into week 1, they're playing the Giants, as we know, but then they have Buffalo, Vegas, and Indianapolis and Washington, and then they go into their bye week. Where do you see them stand in the first 5 games of the season?
I only go about 2 or 3 weeks at a time. Run that by me again. It's the Giants. I know we got Buffalo, and then was it Indy?
Yes.
Indy, Vegas, and
Vegas right after Buffalo.
I don't think it's an awful start for the Titans. I think in general, I looked over the schedule, and in general, I think they're really going to have some very, very difficult road games overall. So I'm not sure exactly where I'm putting in the top 5, but I think overall I have them. I'm straddling between kind of a 10 and a 7 and 11 and 6 record for these guys.
Really?
I like I say, well, it doesn't hurt that you're playing in the AFC South.
That's true too,
either.
Yeah.
But you're going to have some real tough road games. I think it's going to be tough to win in Buffalo, Kansas City, Green Bay. At the Chargers, they have a hard time winning out there. And even you figure they split with Indy and maybe lose to the Bengals at home is kind of what I'm thinking right now. And probably with the loss of Landry, maybe you got to throw one more loss in there just randomly. So my kind of guess got right now is maybe a 10 and 7-ish.
Everybody keeps talking about the Bengals and them going to the Super Bowl. Their offensive line is much stronger than it was last year, and that was their weakness going into the playoffs. Everybody said that this team is stacked. They have the best kicker in football. Their defense is from top to bottom strong. Their quarterback is a star. They have the wide receivers, everything. They can run the ball with Mixon. I really think that this year they're going to take a couple of steps back. They're in a very interesting division. The AFC is very, very strong. And if you look at the Bengals, start of the season and who they're playing, it's not easy. They don't have an easy schedule. So I understand what you're saying. Who's to say that the Titans can't shock them and beat the Bengals in Cincinnati? I think they could. So I'm not a big fan. I love Joe Burrow. I love him. I love his persona. I like everything about him. But it's just something tells me they could take – this is the Cincinnati Bengals we're talking about. We're not talking about the Denver Broncos. Every 5 years they find a superstar quarterback to come and play for their team. It's not the same thing. And I just don't trust that the Cincinnati Bengals are going to do it back-to-back years. That's just my opinion.
It's not outrageous, no. I just the last snapshot we saw of the Titans was the Bengals coming down here, and Joe Burrow, despite the fact he was sacked 9 times, which would fluster any quarterback. He probably threw for 350 yards or so at least that day, and that's the snapshot that I keep seeing of the Bengals. And even though I think this Titans D is going to be good, it was pretty good last year too, and he was still able to take it to him enough to get that win.
The bigger problem in that game was, 1, settling for field goals, and 2, Ryan Tannehill actually throwing a pass that even Eli Apple could deflect. So not a great way to cap not a good year for Tannehill. So as you could tell, I'm a Giants fan, so I'm naturally roasting Eli Apple. So I wanted to ask about that game, the Week 1 matchup. If the Titans have anything to worry about with the Giants in terms of an individual matchup, in terms of what the Titans or maybe have a weakness in, what are you most concerned about from the Titans' perspective against the Giants going into that game?
Yeah, well, I mean, one of the things I think they're most concerned about is what they're going to see. It's a brand new coaching staff, obviously, and you got Brian Daboll and all the Bills influence there, obviously, and then you've got Kafka coming in, and maybe there's some Chiefs influence there, and Wink Martindale on the other side, and what's he going to bring to the table? So I think there's some concern that there's a guessing game going on there. Kevin Byard talked about it the other day that this might be one of those games where you sort of have to feel your way in a little bit, just because you're a little uncertain. What the other team is bringing to the table. There's no tape for a Giants team under this staff yet. I think what's encouraging for the Titans, I guess, is what I saw. You guys have probably seen the same report that I guess Ojulari and Kayvon Thibodeau are kind of not looking too likely at this point to play against the Titans on Sunday. So that's a plus certainly. But I think certainly there are some guys at the skill positions that could scare the Titans. I kind of liked Wan'Dale Robinson coming out of the draft. I think he's a guy that could be productive, and everything I'm hearing, maybe this is just preseason hype, but that Kadarius Toney and Saquon Barkley are rebound better seasons this year. So, I think there are some pieces that could scare the Titans. I think what might play into the Titans' favor, though, is that they will also remember what they did in last year's season opener, which was get pounded by the Arizona Cardinals at Nissan Stadium in Nashville. So I think that season opener may still be fresh in their minds.